Welcome to the Connor and Connor Sports Show. I'm your host, Connor Ace, and that's Connor Sanders.
And we're here to debate and analyze the world of sports.
On today's show, we'll discuss name, image, and likeness rights for the collegiate athletes, the NFL MVP, and have an interview with a former SU football player. We'll start in the world of college football. The field for the playoff has narrowed as the season has worn on. Connor, how do you think the college football playoff will shake out?
Well, it's clear we have a top three right now. Three teams led by high-level quarterbacks, LSU with Joe Burrow, Ohio State with Justin Fields, and then Clemson with Trevor Lawrence. You got elite quarterback talent headed in this one. I think the real question comes down to who's that fourth team?
Yeah, well, so those top three teams are the undefeated teams. They control their own destiny.
Yep.
Okay, and then 4 through 7, all those teams have a chance. And sitting at number 7 is no one else than our very own Utah Utes. And there's going to be a lot of things that got to fall into place for Utah to make the playoff, but it's doable.
Yeah, absolutely. Utah has an 8% chance to make the playoff according to ESPN's rankings. They need some help from the top, especially you look at Georgia. They had to play in the SEC Conference Championship game. It seems like LSU is most likely going to win that one, so they'll probably be kaput. You look at Alabama, who just lost Tua Tagovailoa, who's just the best high school or college football player I think many of us have ever seen.
Sure, man.
And they lose him, so they're probably not going to make the playoff because they have a tough matchup against Auburn next week.
Right.
So teams like Auburn and Oregon and Penn State all kind of can hold on to hope.
Yeah, so Oregon is sitting at number 6, Utah's at number 7. They are on a crash course to meet in the Pac-12 championship. And if both teams win out and then one team wins in the Pac-12 championship convincingly, they have a great shot to make it to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think Utah has enough talent that they need to get
especially on defense.
Yeah, so much speed in that secondary, so much speed in that linebacking core. I think that they could compete with an SEC team, but I just think that the top 3 is so talented, so overpowering, that they're going to walk through whoever that fourth team is, and I don't think the fourth team really has a chance to win it all.
No, especially coming in at one loss. It's going to be an adventure to see how this turns out. Really excited, though.
Absolutely. Only 6 weeks remain in the NFL season, and the race for MVP is heating up. Baltimore Ravens quarterback Lamar Jackson is the current favorite to win at plus 140 according to Las Vegas betting odds, but Seahawks quarterback Russell Wilson is not far behind at plus 150. Connor, is this a 2-horse MVP race in the NFL?
So you'd have to be crazy to think that anyone other than Russell Wilson or Lamar Jackson is going to win the MVP.
Yeah.
And right now, all the rage is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah.
He's doing things that no quarterback has ever done before in the National Football League. And that's saying a lot. And so he's basically just a human highlight reel. But Russell Wilson is leading his team by himself. Lamar Jackson has a great supporting cast, great defense. But Russell Wilson has led his team to an 8-2 record by himself, with his best receiver being a third-round draft pick. Explain that to me.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. Russell Wilson means more to his team. But really what matters when it comes down to NFL MVP is not necessarily who the best player of the season was. It's who had the best season. And I think Lamar Jackson's team is going to keep winning. They're second right now in DVOA, which is the advanced football efficiency metric. I think that they're going to keep winning. If the Seahawks fall off, they end up, 11?
Over the middle, caught by Hollywood Brown. See you later.
Pulled the voting Lamar Jackson's way.
Yeah, and one thing to your point, just another point, is that the Seahawks play in the NFC. And the NFC is absolutely stacked. You got
it really is.
You got the 49ers, who only have one loss to the Seahawks, by the way, to go to my point. But there's a lot of good teams, including the Cowboys, and it's going to be an absolute bloodbath to see who can get to the playoffs. Whereas the AFC, it's the Ravens, Chiefs, and the Patriots, and so that might help Lamar's cause in the long run.
Yeah, his schedule toward the end of the season is easier, and the surrounding talent he has around him is really impressive. You look at those receivers like Hollywood Brown, who's having a huge season, so really intrigued by how this ends up shaking out in the end.
Absolutely. EA Sports is a burgeoning industry. It's growing at an alarming rate and is especially popular among the young people. Competitive gaming has exploded onto the global stage. Last summer's League of Legends final drew nearly 100 million viewers worldwide. We now go to our reporter Alex Schilling, who has an update on the esports world.
This is Alex Schilling at the Wing SUU, here to recap some of the last week's esport news. While many of the esports seasons are over or coming to an end, there's still a lot of interesting stories for fans. League of Legends fans are still reeling over the results of the World Championship. Fun plus Phoenix swept the finals, winning 3-0 against the favorite G2 Sports and walked away with the cup. Before setting foot in France, Fun Plus's jungler Gao Tianliang commented that he hoped to hear cheers for his team despite the European opponents being the fan favorites. This dream came true as the team held up their cup with tears in their eyes, listening to cheers of FPX erupting throughout the stadium. Dota 2's two-time champions Johan Sunstein and Sebastian Debs are working to create a new CSGO company. The new company was registered on November 5th and is named OG CSGO. Sunstein and Debs are set to be co-directors and co-owners of the organization. Rumors had been circulating throughout the community, both about the roster and the formation of the company. With the company now public knowledge, the roster should finally be coming out soon. While the Overwatch League has concluded for the year, teams are still working towards next year's season. Los Angeles Gladiators have signed support main Nolan Edwards to their lineup for the upcoming season. Edwards is one of the several upcoming players that have moved from the contenders bracket into the official league. The league requires teams to have their final rosters submitted by November 15th, so be sure to check out the players for your favorite teams if you haven't already. Along with the buzz over the upcoming season, Blizzard is continuing to make fan-requested changes to the game, specifically trying to change up the current meta of the game on the test realms. Players are frustrated over the emphasis on shields in the current meta, and to go along with this, Blizzard is making changes to several of the heroes so that they're more viable. This should hopefully change the way that the competitive play goes, but we'll have to wait and see. Along with balance changes, Blizzard is also testing a quote, "while you wait" feature. This feature will allow players to play around in the practice range, skirmishes, death matches, and custom games while they wait for their queue to pop. While not necessarily a competitive change, it is still a welcome one as the comp queues can be upwards of 20 minutes at times. That's all I have for you today. This is Alex Schilling reporting for SUTV News. Back to the desk.
Thank you, Alex. All right, Connor, the million-dollar question. Do you consider esports to be sports?
Absolutely. I think it's no question. When you look at the level of devotion that these esports players put into their game, put into their craft, it's very similar to what you talk about with real athletics, with real sports. And sometimes it's even more. You have League of Legends players that practice for like 10 hours a day. They really devote their life to that. And it's hard for me not to accredit that effort by calling them not a sport.
Connor, you're a friend of mine, and sometimes friends have to tell each other when they're wrong. Esports are not sports, okay? Sport is defined as an athletic competition involving physical prowess, skill, and competition. Now, esports cover skill. I'm not going to deny that you have to have a lot of skill to get good at that.
And competition, too.
And competition. But where does the physical exertion and training come in?
I have a really hard time calling esports players athletes. I really don't think that esports are athletics per se, but I do think that they are competitive enough to be considered sporting people. They devote their lives to this as much as Lamar Jackson and Russell Wilson did. So I have a really hard time calling them athletes because it's true. Like, they go through like eye strain. That's like their big injury and like wrist damage and stuff.
That's the comparison to a torn ACL in the NFL or NBA, right?
Yeah, I get the argument on both sides, but you know. Coming up next, we'll look at the NCAA's decision to open up financial opportunities for players.
Stay tuned.
What do you think it would be like to teach? Chances are, you have no idea. Teachers today are breaking down obstacles, finding innovative ways to instill old lessons, proving that greatness can be found in everyday places, and that you don't need to be famous to be unforgettable. That's what it's like to teach.
You know what, guys? There's a lot of tree branches and dry brush over here. We should probably move the bonfire over there.
I'm guessing Smokey liked that idea.
college players may have the chance to be paid for their likeness in a recent decision involving the NCAA.
I was able to take a closer look at the deal and how it benefits college players.
Is it time to pay the college athletes?
In a major announcement, the NCAA has embraced change in response to national pressure facing the issue of whether student athletes should be allowed to be paid. The decision came shortly after the state of California passed a bill that would allow student athletes to profit off their own name, image, and likeness.
Prior to this ruling, and this is only in California, a player could not profit from anything they did in college. You were only entitled to cost of attendance. That's it. And if you received any money at all for anything, then you were declared ineligible.
The NCAA, which has received criticism for raking in billions of dollars on the backs of student athletes, has done little to address those concerns.
So the California Fair Play law essentially pushed the NCAA's hand. If California did not pass that law saying all of our student athletes by, I believe, 2023 are going to be able to sign endorsement deals, sell their own image, likeness, profit off of that, the NCAA wouldn't have done anything.
The NCAA has used the facade of amateurism to avoid having to pay student athletes, something that has been criticized for decades.
The minute you started selling tickets, the minute that happened, it became a business. And when it became a business, the players became employees. And nothing is going to change that. If you start paying the players, now we're just acknowledging that they are professionals. And you should pay them. The
amount of time that student athletes invest in their craft is similar to the time the professionals put into their craft.
The time that it takes to be a college athlete, it's like a full-time job on top of being a student.
Not only will the large schools be affected, but also the ones that thrive in small towns.
We don't know how it's going to affect small markets specifically. Again, there's a lot of different avenues you can make money off of. It's not just deals with major corporations. You can make deals with local businesses.
So we're looking at over 1,000 schools and all of their programs. All of those students now have the opportunity to make a little something extra on the side.
The NCAA's initial concern about the new rule was that it would disrupt the competitive balance between schools, something that history has proven wrong.
Half of all NCAA Final Four appearances for the last 60 years have gone to 20 schools. Half of them. There are 350 Division I programs. 20 of them have half of the Final Four appearances.
At the end of the day, will there be a power imbalance? Absolutely. But there already is one, and people still watch college sports, people still enjoy them, and that's going to continue to be the same thing. I don't think that's going to be a major issue moving forward.
Experts believe that allowing players to make money will actually help the competitive balance.
This new rule, the way it's set up, is basically the best thing to happen to the NCAA's long-term sustainability. If the NCAA was not able to get a rule like this passed, where suddenly they can use third parties to make money instead of going through the schools, then the NCAA was on the fast track to just dissolving.
Would a business be willing to pay $1 million to keep a player who's on the bench? No. When that bench player said, going back to your scenario, he wants to transfer, I pay him money. Why does he want to transfer? I'm not getting to play. Why would I pay you to not play? I'm not going to pay you to do that. That player will transfer, and they'll go to another school like Nebraska or Mississippi State, and that school will say, look, we'll pay you because you're going to be a starter. And Kentucky's going to say, why would I pay you $1 million to sit on my bench? I don't have enough room for you. And so what would end up happening is all those players who go to Kentucky now, who sit on the bench, would all wander to other programs, which would make college basketball more competitive.
The new law takes pressure off the schools of having to decide how much to pay student athletes and who receives the most, something the athletes are willing to accept.
I'm not saying that the athletes, they play college sports for the money. They would do it regardless, because they still do. Before this rule passed, they played just because they love to play. But with so much money that those athletes make their college, it's not very fair that the college profits completely off of what that athlete gives them. It's not like they're going to get paid like professional athletes. If you limit them from getting a piece back of what they make the college, that's not fair. They should deserve some of that money that they make.
For SUTV News, I'm Connor Aist.
Simply pay the damn players.
So I had a lot of fun sitting down with David and picking his brain. because he knows literally everything about the economy of sports.
Yeah, you can tell.
Yeah, he's awesome. And he was saying that Zion Williamson, the star NCAA basketball player last year, was worth $5 million to Duke basketball.
Wow.
And he got somewhere in the vicinity of $20,000 to attend the school. And that the average student athlete for basketball in Division I is $180,000. Okay, so there's just a huge disparity of what the players are worth and what they're actually getting.
Yeah, and when you look at coaches too, it's not like they're short on money. Nick Saban gets his own house at the University of Alabama.
Yeah, it's insane.
Like, the coaches are paid handsomely, and in some programs, they would rather have the coach than a player, right? You would rather pay the coach that money, and so the players don't get to see any of that. And it's almost like the incentive is that you get to be here, but that's just not enough for me.
Yeah, and one of the really important distinctions is student athletes aren't being paid as employees. They can just profit off their own image, and they can sign endorsements and sponsorships and stuff like that.
Yeah. NCAA video games would make a good opportunity for student athletes to potentially profit off their likeness. Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019 is an unlicensed college football game that may begin using real players as soon as next season. I played the game to see what opportunities it can offer. Let's have a look. Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019 is a charming game, but it's pretty bad. Given its origins, it kind of makes sense. The game was developed by Canuck Play, an indie developer who has essentially made 3 different versions of this game. Canuck Play evidently consists of these 2 people on their website and this guy that I guess they hired later on. It's essentially a reboot of the old EA Sports NCAA football games, but there's much more football than just what the college teams offer. There's a fully fleshed out Canadian Football League and an NFL ripoff, but I wanted to play the game for Dynasty Mode, where you can control your own college football program. I won this game on Twitter as part of a random retweet contest, so I can't complain too much about it. It stands as living proof that making good sports video games is really hard, and points to just how incredible the old NCAA football games used to be. The first thing you'll notice about Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019 is that all of the colleges don't use licensed names or uniforms. Former players started suing EA Sports for using their likenesses in the old NCAA sport games, and that effectively killed the NCAA football franchise. So the folks at Canuck Play just made replicas of all the schools to create an entirely unlicensed college football game. That gives us teams like the Utah Christian Freeze and the Tuscaloosa Pride. So, in the spirit of the game, I made a knockoff version of SUU called the Utah South Lightning Birds. The coolest part of this game is definitely the amount of customization options. Uniforms can be changed at any point throughout the season, and I had a lot of fun messing around with the jerseys. Roster changes are slow and tedious, but eventually I got all of SUU's most important players in the game. Then I added myself as a 6'8" beast of a tight end and started just destroying fools. The gameplay is pretty fun, but the animations do look pretty choppy. The pacing of on-field action is pretty nice though. You can skip nearly every post-play cutscene, but if you need a few extra seconds to take a sip of your drink or something, there's plenty of time to do that. Maximum Football 2019's initial learning curve is strange because a lot of the buttons don't do what you're expecting them to. X is sprint when you're running with the ball on offense, but when you're the quarterback you have to press R2 to sprint. It gets pretty confusing. That's the least of the game's problems. Route running is incredibly inconsistent because formations don't adjust for each play not beginning in the middle of the field. Running the ball is so easy. Seriously, you can run up the middle for 10 yards at a time. I tested this and ran an entire drive of QB sneaks. And sure enough, 3 minutes and 30 in-game seconds later, Chris Helbig barreled into the end zone on a QB sneak. All of the in-game tutorials are just still controller maps, and I couldn't figure out how to kick the ball for the longest time. I kept kicking 2-yarders on kickoffs and missing extra points and got so frustrated that I had to look up a tutorial online like a simpleton. Even the CPU struggles with kicking. They tried this super long field goal against me, completely scuffed it, and then my player picked up the loose ball in the end zone and got tackled, and the game called it a safety? What? One time I had scored a TD to pull within 4 in the final moments of a game, and I missed the extra point because of the crappy kicking controls. The game froze after I kicked the extra point. 4 days later I came back and the game was still frozen. I reset the game and it put me right back to where it crashed when I loaded it back up. I tried to kick the extra point again and it crashed again after I missed. When I went back in, all my progress in the game was lost. Frustrating to say the least. The game crashes a lot. I had to recreate Utah South like 4 times because the game just kept crashing on the uniform screen. This is why I feel like I learned so much about how hard it is to make a game like this, especially with a team of just 2 or 3 people. It's not near as good as the old NCAA games, but if you want to play a college football game on a modern console, this is pretty much your only option. If you're really desperate to play a dynasty mode and are willing to save often to avoid losing your progress, then Doug Flutie's Maximum Football 2019 might be worth a try. It's not a fulfilling experience by any means, but designing the uniforms and fooling around with the gameplay is worth a few lazy weekends. That being said, I never would have played it if I hadn't won it, and after I finish this review, I'll probably never play it again. 4 out of 10. It's alright, but it's not very good. 4 out of 10. Like I said, it's okay. It's a good effort, and when you think about how small the development team is, it's 3 people that made that whole video game, came up with all the logos for all the fake teams, did all of that themselves. It's a pretty impressive undertaking.
Yeah, well, ever since that first lawsuit when the NCAA had to stop making that game, people have been wanting to go after anybody to get that game back. And so I guess there was an attempt to get it back, but it kind of crashed and burned from what it looks like.
I mean, they knew going in that they weren't going to be able to make real schools and real players, but they just wanted to make something, And you can recruit, you can make your uniforms look all cool, you can play the games. It's worth a couple weekends. It's not like the NCAA football games where you could literally just spend so much time fleshing out your dynasty. This one's fun for bits, but it crashed so much, so frustrating. Every time it would just freeze and just break. Yeah.
That would drive me nuts. So in light of, okay, we're going to take a short break, but when we come back, Connor, you interviewed a former football player. Is that right?
Yes, I did. That's right. We'll take a look at that interview right after the break.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
I'm here with Chinedu Ahananu, former SUU football player, to talk about the state of the program, to talk about how things are going. SUU experiencing a little bit of a down patch, I'd say. Last season only picking up 1 win, picking up 3 wins this season, 3-8. So you, Chinedu, former linebacker for the team, you've been through the ups and downs. You were with the team when they won the Big Sky Championship. Now, and last season you were with the team when they only won 1 win. So tell me about just your experience as a football player and kind of seeing both sides of the coin.
For one thing, for sure, I think it's taught me and the guys that I've played with to stay humble.
Yeah.
Because I've been here, like I said, for a long time. So in 2013, we made the playoffs for the first time. Next season, we were 3-8, and then I lived my mission. They won the Big Sky. They went 6-5, had a good year, and then we won the Big Sky again my first season back. Yep. Just experiencing that 1-8 for sure taught me to stay humble, continue to put that chip on the shoulder, and we don't really get a ton of media attention. So I think that was the biggest thing, is just to remember what we can do and what we've seen, the success, but also remember hey, the next season you could go and win 1 game. So,
is there any kind of sense of frustration that, after you've done so well, that you have to go through such hard times? You feel like, I wish things were different, or do you kind of just have to confront how life is?
A little bit of both. Of course, I knew the things that our team was capable of, so it was really frustrating. But I know me and another guy, Taylor Nelson, he graduated last year too. Yep. The two of us, we wanted to instill with our room, the linebacker core, hardworking guys, guys that fought for the team, and then guys that played their hardest no matter what. And looking at those guys now, the young guys coming up, being the leaders, I really feel like that's one thing that we left, at least. If it was one of the things we went 1-10 or whatever, but to leave that success and leave the mentality with those guys, I think that was a big thing that I found success in as well. Not being in the room, I think there could be other things and things I know that they're addressing already. Yeah. But first of all, not to change, but they have to beat Dixie State next year, first game of the season. Pretty sure they play, it's 20. Yeah, it'll be 2020. I'm pretty sure they start they have to win that game. That's the number one thing, just to continue that, hey, this is the school in Southern Utah. But I think too, just making sure that guys play not only for themselves, but play for SU, play for the Thunderbirds. The guys that I've played with, in the past, and guys that are still here, I know that we found the most success when we were playing for the university and we're playing for each other rather than playing for ourselves.
Well, can you speak to that kind of importance of culture and establishing that kind of winning mentality? How important was that for you?
Oh, huge. I think too, we had the times we had success, we had a ton of guys doing it too. Yeah. So I just think guys coming together and playing for the brand, playing for our school together, I think they have the talent. I think they're more talented than some teams we've had in the past. But it's just guys sticking together, I think they'll be okay. And I think they're trending in the right direction. And I do think, though, there's a void with seniors and just like the leadership in that aspect, because I think they have like 10 this year.
Yeah.
And my season we had like 11. So it was like the year we won the Big Sky, we had 20. So just lack of the upperclassmen, but they're stacked with sophomores and underclassmen right now. So I think give them a little bit more time to grow and develop and mature. And I think if those guys that are coming up now can stay locked in, and the guys that are already here can continue to teach, like, hey, this is how we do things, they'll be fine. And then they'll get back onto the winning ways and just keep rolling.
How would you talk to, I guess, fans of the program or students at SU? How would you try and kind of continue to inspire faith in the program and not give up on SU football?
Man, that was actually been frustrating this season. And like last year, it's like stadium was packed when we were winning, and then as soon as we start losing, everyone's gone. So that was pretty frustrating to see guys like, oh, like we suck now. We've had bad years in the past. We've had good years. So it's like you think there's a school so deeply rooted in like the city, you think that there'd be a little bit more for the students and things like that. But also they don't know all the work that these guys put in. Definitely. They don't know. You say they don't even know that much about football. But you look at a team like Sac State, who we beat last year with 1-10, losing their quarterback and things like that. But they were the bottom of the Big Sky last year with us, and now they're the second best or third best team in the Big Sky. Yeah. So it's like things can flip in the Big Sky super easily and super crazy. So just to stay with the team, because we don't really want you guys if you guys are going to be with us when we're up and then gone when we're down. I think it's lame, but that's just me personally.
Can you tell me just maybe any final thoughts on SU football, what you've learned from your past that might be applicable to the future of the program?
Just, I talked to the guys that I played with before. Yeah. I think just playing for SU, playing for the guys before you, I think tradition is super important to me and what I think. And a school that is, has been here for a long time. The football program isn't super prestigious yet, but I do think if we can build a winning culture, people will stop up north, stop looking at us like the little brother and things like that. And that's the thing that's so beautiful about college football, is that it's so deeply rooted in tradition. Yeah. And so if guys will buy into that, I think it'll pay off for the university and for the team in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think just looking around athletics, looking around the athletic department, all of these teams are trending positively. Like SU volleyball is doing better this year. There's a lot of excitement about men's and women's basketball.
Be good this year.
So you can see that there's kind of a progression. I think the SU football is on a similar path, but it takes a process at all. You have to go through those hard practices, those hard spring practices, and get those new faces in to kind of push the program forward. So, well, Chinito, I appreciate having you on and joining us here on Sports Show.
Of course.
Yeah, so huge thanks to Chinito for joining us, former Big Sky all-conference level competitor, kind of pointing out to some of the problems that SU football has. Connor, what do you think SU football needs to do to turn things around?
Well, he made a great point about talking about the players needing to buy into the culture.
Yeah.
And what that means is that every aspect of the team, all the players have to be willing to be there, whether that's workouts, the early morning film sessions, being committed to doing everything involved with the team that the coaches have laid out.
Yeah.
And he's been through everything. He's been through the Big Sky Championship, and then been through the season where they had one win. And so I think what he said kind of sums everything up. All the players have to have one mind and one focus in order to have the kind of success that they want.
And they have the exact kind of leader that they need to instill that kind of culture. I mean, Demario Warren is one of the most decorated FCS football coaches at his age. He's so young, so stable. I think that having a coach like that is reassuring. Okay, this guy's got us. He knows what he's talking about. He's going to help us get back on track. And you look just even 2 years ago, SU football won the Big Sky Conference Championship. Now we're looking at a 1-3 team, but we've proven we can do it, and that maybe we can do it again.
Yeah, I mean, the big question is why and how have these last 2 years come to be after so many years of playing great? And I don't know, but hopefully SU can bounce back, because they have the talent, they have the skill, and big things are coming in the future. Mark my words.
Absolutely. That's all we've got for time for today. Thank you for joining us on the Connor and Connor Sports Show.
Be sure to tune in after the Thanksgiving break for more news.